Baltimore and W of waiting on football to begin. The Ravens will thankfully begin play next week, but in the meantime, the Orioles will continue to host some baseball games here despite the scuffling over the weekend with the Chicago Cubs. On come the Texas Rangers of Arlington. This guy spends an appreciable amount of his time discussing all things football in his market as well. They have a little football team down there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area called the Cowboys. He'll be on that duty in about a week, as will our Luke Jones, double-dipping here. But Pat Doney does all things baseball as well in the summer down there in the heat at NBC5. We welcome one of our defending champion Jerry Jones talkers on to talk, strangely enough, about the Texas Rangers. And, hey, Pat, first off, welcome and happy summer to you. I know it's hotter than Hades down there in deep in the heart of Texas this time of year, right?
No question, it's hot, but I'm ready for football season. I'll be in Oxnard, California for training camp here in just a few days, so can't wait for that. The Cowboys arrive on the 22nd, so can't believe that it's already almost here. Anything
that Oxnard recommends this time of year other than the fact that, they got every football team in America now playing in Southern California, right?
Pretty much true, and the Cowboys will play the Rams in the Coliseum, so that'll be fun to be there for that game. And, man, it's just one of the most beautiful places on the earth. It's just right on the coast there, beautiful place. Great seafood. It's a wonderful place, and I hope Jerry keeps sending the Cowboys out there for training camp every year. It's a great little trip for the media as well.
If they put up another 13 or 14 win season, I think you'll put them wherever they want to practice. We'll get to the Cowboys in a minute, and look, we got our own issues with the Ravens here, but this is really for any town that enjoys baseball, right? Not all these NFL towns have a team, but when you do, everything about all of these cities is about the NFL. Even in Boston, right? I mean, in places where the baseball team's going right, I would think the same thing's true in Houston, down the street from you, where the start of training camp really is the beginning of something. But in the meantime, boy, these next 2 weeks are very, very treacherous for all of these baseball franchises. And the Rangers, historically, have been one of the teams that have done well this time of the year, even willing themselves back into a pennant race with some pretty crafty dealing 2 years ago with the Phillies. They're still sort of eating off of that, but they're so far out of the race with Houston. And I know, that strikes home down there in Dallas when you're 15 games behind Houston at anything, right?
No question. I mean, they're way out in the West, and nobody's even discussing about the division anymore, despite the fact that the Rangers have won a couple in a row. What the conversation is now is the wild card and just how realistic that is. Look, the Rangers have been floating around 500, it feels like, for the last 2 months. They've seen some flashes with guys like Cole Hamels playing and pitching much better over the last few weeks. He has not given up a run in more than 20 innings now over his last couple starts. He's been great since coming back from the injury. Rougned Odor is hitting again. And it feels like this Rangers team, if they could get into the playoffs and if they are to make some moves at the trade deadline to help fix their bullpen, they could make some noise in the postseason. And you know that the key is just getting into the playoffs. If you get in, then you have a shot. And that's what the Rangers are focused on right now. John Daniels, the Rangers general manager, has said that he expects this team to contend this season, and they're going to act accordingly at the trade deadline. I do not see this team being a seller at the trade deadline. I expect the Rangers to maybe not go all in buying, but I think that they will add a piece here or there because they believe they have a great shot to get that wild card spot. And with guys like Hamels and Adrian Beltre and toward the end of his career and Yu Darvish in the last year of his contract here with the Rangers here in Texas, I expect them to try and give it one more run here this season. And if they get in, they've got a shot to do some damage.
Well, it's been a lot of longing there. Even going back to when Buck was running around there, that they have been traditionally a very good franchise and a franchise that's been in it all the time. And, with a lot of these guys, you mentioned the guys that have been there for a number of years, as well as some of the newcomers like Napoli and some other guys. But, there's a core of guys there that most Major League Baseball teams haven't had for 3 or 4 or 5 years, the Andruses and the Beltres and those guys.
Yeah, no question. I mean, there's a great clubhouse here, and there's, it's a great combination. John Daniels, the GM, had a good conversation with me at spring training back in February in Surprise, Arizona, where he said the Rangers do not believe in windows. They believe that it is their job to be playoff contenders every single season, and that if a team gets in the postseason, if they're hot, they got a chance to win the whole thing. And if you look at the way the Rangers are made up with guys like you mentioned, Mike Napoli and Cole Hamels and Adrian Beltre, those are guys that are toward the end of their career. Not saying that this is the last year by any stretch, but they only have a few seasons left in their Major League Baseball career. The Rangers also have guys like Nomar Mazara and Rougned Odor. These are guys that are 21, 22 years old who have been in the big leagues for 2-3 seasons now. So they have a great balance of veterans and young guys, but really it's just a good mix all the way through and through. I think it's a team that believes that they can contend if they get in the playoffs, but it's just right now everybody's jumbled up in that American League wild card race. The Rangers are one of those teams. They're going to need to get hot here, I think, in the next week or so to really convince Daniels that he needs to be a big-time buyer at the deadline if that's what they decide to go ahead and do.
They don't hit the ball well. They don't get on base, do they?
They strike out a lot, but they hit a lot of home runs. I think
that sounds like my team. It's beer league softball, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, Elvis Andrus is having the best year of his career. Adrian Beltre has been really good since coming back from his injury that caused him to miss a big chunk of the season. The team was really bad offensively early on in the year. I think they're getting a little better. And, Rougned Odor is a big part of that. Their second baseman, famous for the Jose Bautista punch, a year ago. They gave him a nice big contract in the offseason, and he's clearly been pressing for most of the year until, recently. I think he's playing better baseball, and I think he's kind of coming around. It's a team that, they're hot and cold. I'll tell you, they've been on winning streaks of 9, 10, 11 games, and they've been on losing streaks where they've gone like 1-8 over a 9-game stretch a couple of times both ways. And so it's just a matter of getting hot for the right amount of time. That's what it's going to come down to for this team. And I think they need to get hot soon to convince John Daniels, the GM, to go ahead and pull the trigger on potentially trading one of their top prospects, a guy like Jurickson Profar, to go out there and land a couple of bullpen arms to really kind of take them to up to the next level.
Pat Doney joining us here from NBC5, deep in the heart of Texas in Dallas, where the Arlington, Texas Rangers will be in Baltimore all week long here. We're going to see all variety of these pitchers. Dude, we send a pitcher out every single night who stinks. And that's just not me saying that. Just go and look it up. It's literally the worst pitching rotation that I've seen in my lifetime here, and I don't know that it's certainly gotten worse over the weekend with the Cubs. The Rangers send a couple of guys out there every 5 days they'd rather not, right? Perez is mostly stunk. Ross has struggled. I think Cashner's been better. Darvish is always seemingly sort of working back from the arm issue. But I'll say this. You get me in a short series and you're going to give me Hamels and Darvish going in a short series in October with the bats they have there. I would take my chances against Houston or Cleveland or New York or Boston or whatever with this lineup if they can climb that hill. But part of that hill right now is the Kansas City Royals and the Tampa Rays and the Minnesota Twins and Seattle and L.A. in your own division, all sort of banging around where I don't know that any of these teams should have any great hope, but one of them or two of them are going to make the playoffs at this point. And the Yankees have certainly fallen back from good graces over the last month where they have really stunk. They played .350 ball. So, it is sitting there for most of these teams, and I think the next 2 weeks, to have a John Daniels, to have that kind of guy who's been decorated as being good on trades, good on talent, good on prospects, good on international signing, I'd rather have that guy running my franchise than some of these other guys over the next 2 weeks.
John Daniels has done a great job with the Rangers. No question about that. And to your point about getting into the playoffs with, a pitching rotation like the Rangers have with Yu Darvish and Cole Hamels going 1 and 2, and then you could make the case for either Perez or Cashner or Ross or however you want to fill out 3, 4, 5. Darvish and Hamels, especially of late, have both been really good. Yu Darvish's record is not very impressive, but people who follow baseball closely and cover the team closely know that record really doesn't matter because the pitcher only has so much control over that. The Rangers are averaging less than 2 runs a game when Yu Darvish pitches. So it's hard to win baseball games when that's the case. He was an all-star this year and was well-deserving of that. And Cole Hamels has not given up a run in over 20 innings of work up until this point right now. 20 straight innings without allowing a run. His personal record for that is 25 back with the Phillies. So he's pitching about as well as he ever has in his career since coming back from this injury. They're in a good spot right now when it comes to starting pitching. This team, it comes down to the bullpen. The bullpen has been really bad this season, a little better of late, but, they're blowing saves left and right. They've changed closers multiple times. They're just trying to find the right Midas touch there to try and get it to where it works, and that's going to be what it comes down to at the trade deadline with Daniels. He needs to go, and he needs to make a move, maybe 2, to bring in guys who could be reliable in the bullpen, because so far the bullpen has not been reliable. I will say they have a pitcher in Jake Diekman who's been very good out of the bullpen the last couple of seasons for them, and he's coming back from surgery where he had to have his colon removed. It was a really, really interesting story. I can get into it, a long story, but in another time. But he's coming back, and he's impressive. He's a good player, and I think he'll help them. He should be back in the beginning of August. So that should help them a little bit as well. But it's going to come down to the bullpen, in my opinion, because I think the starting pitching, at least at the top, and the offense will be good enough for the Rangers to make some noise in the postseason if they get there.
You know, you mentioned the Cole Hamels situation and him being unavailable earlier in the year. And we had the same thing here with Tillman, and we were kind of hoping that he would be able to come back and be the old him, which, you know, on his best day, I don't think he's Cole Hamels, and I know Cole Hamels is making a lot of money, and that was part of the deal. But you really have to tip the cap to Daniels for everything that's happened for this franchise over the last 2 years, because it was winning that deal at a time when everyone thought the Rangers would be a seller and not necessarily a buyer, or not really even a factor in that race 2 years ago. Since then, and I know we talked about record, and you know I'm a smart baseball guy as well when it comes to the back of the bubblegum card, wins and losses. Although it is the first thing I look at, I just dismiss it. It just forces me to dig deeper when I look down and see a starter who's 6-8, right? But Cole Hamels is 26-6 since coming over in the deal. ERA around 3, and as you've pointed out, if he's right, and it appears at least so far so good a month and a half into this second experiment, to have that kind of guy in the front of the rotation is exactly what's missing around here. That, you can never sort of get it right at the 3 or 4 or 5 spot if you're not getting it right at the 1 or the 2. And I think because of the Darvish and certainly the ability for Daniels to go out and make some moves at this deadline, I really do give the Rangers hope here more so than I would if you were giving me a nickel and betting it on any of these teams. I'd be more apt to bet it on them than, let's say, Tampa or Minnesota, or to your point, some of these teams that don't even have players that have ever climbed that mountain.
Well, and they have guys on the roster who have done it before. They've been good in the postseason before. They've been in big moments. They've been in these races before. When you talk about, Hamels and Darvish, these are guys who have done it before as far as not in the playoffs, but getting a team into the postseason and been good down a stretch of a regular season. And then, I'll side with Adrian Beltre any time in a big moment. That guy is just, he's been in so many big moments. He's been so good for so long, now approaching the 3,000 hit mark. I think this team, with still around 70 games left in the season, to be only a couple games out of the wild card, with some of these veterans coming back from injury and starting to play better, there are Rangers fans who are saying, trade Yu Darvish in the last year of his deal. Go ahead and sell, get rid of everybody. And I would want them to ask and find out what it's like to be a San Diego Padres fan, a fan who hasn't even been in contention, seen his team in contention for a decade. If the Padres are 2 games out of the wild card right now, they're selling everything they have to try and go all in to try and, get into the postseason. Whereas the Rangers, because they've been to the playoffs so many times over the last 6 or 7 years, it's, well,
dude, how about this, Pat? Look at the Cubs. We had the Cubs in here kicking our asses all weekend, right? They go out, they make the big early splash on Quintana. I don't want to say that they're not in it, but, man, they're 5.5 games out at the break, right? And they're barely a 500 team, and they've already got a ring that everybody can kiss. And they've already had their parade, which is sorely lacking in Texas and Cleveland and Washington and some of these other places, and L.A., quite frankly, for the modern era, where there's been close, but there's been no cigar for a lot of these franchises. And, they went in all in. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't, and certainly for the long-term prospects of a lot of these franchises, like here in Baltimore, in Kansas City, and some other places where they're getting old very quickly, and I think we saw that in San Francisco as well after winning championships. I'm really with you on the what do you owe the fans? Well, if you're in it, you're in it. And I would certainly say there is a little extra something about Houston, right? I mean, Houston was never even the same league, let alone the same division, and this year has been a little bit of a rocking of the civic worlds down there. I mean, the city of Houston has nothing to pound on its chest about, maybe outside of Akeem Olajuwon, 25 years ago, right? I mean, Dallas always sort of gets over on Houston that this is the beginning of like a real rivalry there that we don't have with Baltimore and Washington on baseball or football for that matter.
The rivalry has really ramped up between those two teams over the last few seasons. You can just see it in one back and forth on social media earlier this year when Rangers manager Jeff Bannister said in an interview that there's a reason the Rangers have Texas across their chest and the Astros have Houston across theirs. And Lance McCullers responded on social media saying, that's because nobody knows what an Arlington is, and so it kind of went back and forth. And
beautiful. I love it. That's outstanding.
There have been benches clearing brawls, and if you want to call them brawls in baseball, and so it's, it definitely is heated. And after the way things went last year when the Rangers just destroyed the Astros during the regular season and rode that dominance to winning the division, and then now here the Astros are up, substantially, double-digit lead in the American League West race in the middle of July. I think it means a little extra between those two franchises, but the Rangers are not even worried about that right now. Right now they're locked in solely on the wild card, and I think they have a real chance to get in if their buyers at the deadline don't go crazy, is what I would suggest to John Daniels. But if they do go and make a couple of moves here and there to try and shore up that bullpen, I think they've got a chance to get in the playoffs. And if you have a chance to get in the postseason, I think you have to take it in today's world because you never know when you're going to get ready to go on one of those 6, 7, 8-year droughts where you don't make the playoffs a single time. If you got a shot, I think you got to go for it.
Yeah, Mr. Angelos forbid the Orioles from dealing with the Nationals because he doesn't want to see a parade in Washington, D.C., obviously. I would think the same circumstance where you are, which is no one in Arlington wants to sit in October and watch the Astros play baseball, right? Like literally without having a chance to knock them out. Hey, we even saw the Yankees and the Red Sox over the weekend, playing that ungodly 6-hour game on Saturday night and all of that, and doubleheader Sunday. There are some local things heating up above and beyond what the Giants and the Dodgers have had recently, right?
Yeah, there's no question. That rivalry is real, and it's going to be for a long time. Major League Baseball putting the Astros and Rangers in the same division was a great move. This was what Rob Manfred, and I spoke to him about it right after they made the move a couple of years ago. And, he said this is what they had in mind when they made that decision. They want that rivalry in Texas to be there, and it's there. These two franchises, there's a rivalry that's developed, and it's good for baseball. It's good for baseball in Texas. And both franchises have been pretty good over the last couple of years, and there are signs that they're both going to be good for a while.
All right, we're through the most insignificant portion of our programming here with Pat Doney from NBC5 down in Texas, in Dallas. You can find him at Pat Doney. That's D-O-N-E-Y, NBC5, one of our favorites from the Metroplex, as they say. All right, dude, it's almost Cowboy season, and it's almost Ravens season here, and certainly with our baseball team hitting the skids and the trading deadline, the only thing we're looking at this point, football is here, and coming off that kind of a year, and you've been around this for a little while, deep in the heart of Texas, and certainly for all of those who hate the Cowboys out there, and I'm probably in that camp, it's been a little while since they've come back with this sort of a vengeance with a running back and a quarterback and gaudy stats and an offensive line that's incredible. But there have also been some real losses along the defense, and I think there are some questions about the Cowboys, if not that division where it feels like the Redskins have gone a little backwards and the Eagles and the Giants maybe can't get out of their way, although I'm not anti-Giant at this point, but the Cowboys are clearly the favorite this year, and that's a unique position for the Cowboys right now, right?
Well, they're clearly the favorite, I would say, but there are definite question marks, and in some ways, the question marks could be improvements. They've lost a good amount on the defensive side of the ball, but they've brought in and drafted some very talented young guys to come in that they expect to make an impact right away. So I think the Cowboys on defense will be a lot less experienced, but they will be much, much more athletic. They're going to be faster. They're going to be younger. And that is what worked for the Cowboys back in 2014 when that defense out of nowhere went from being one of the worst in the league to being above average. Was they just got extremely young, and they just went and brought in a bunch of guys who were early in their careers, who were really athletic, and they were, okay. And really, when you have Ezekiel Elliott running the football and you have Dak Prescott, who should improve with more experience on the field and a full season under his belt, you don't need your defense to be outstanding. You don't need it to be amazing. You just need it to be really above average to have a shot. And they were about that last year, and I think they've got a chance to be that again, maybe a little better, with the athleticism. Early on, it's going to be a big question because they have some players who are going to be suspended early in the season, and they're taking on the Giants and the Broncos in week 1 and week 2. That's never easy. But, with this team, after what I saw a year ago, the 13-3 year that really was 13-2, and they rested everybody the final game of the regular season, I think this team has a chance to be special again. Maybe not quite 13-3 again, but I'm picking them to win the division, maybe somewhere along the lines of 11-5.
Any thoughts about how Prescott could even be better this year? I mean, I know that's always the sophomore thing, right? For all of these quarterbacks who come out of the gate like he did, I mean, the level of expectation, go back to Kaepernick and Russell Wilson and, the latest in this generation, it is a very, very hard thing, as Cam Newton found out, a very hard thing to maintain. Once you've found it, last year becomes a long time ago very quickly in a lot of cases.
There's no question in my mind that Dak Prescott can be better this year than he was a year ago. He was amazing as a rookie. I mean, and I don't throw that word around lightly. I mean, arguably the greatest rookie season for a quarterback in NFL history. When you look at his stats and what he did, it was incredible. And to become, this was not the number one pick in the NFL draft. I mean, a late round guy doing that, unbelievable what he did. But he's the one who told me when I spoke to him during OTAs that he literally feels like he can improve in every aspect of his game. And if you look at, the way he played last year was really good. He was very good at taking care of the football, but he wasn't fantastic at throwing the ball down the field. And he wasn't amazing when it came to, fade routes in the end zone to Dez Bryant and throwing inside the red zone. He did a great job of taking care of the football and made some big throws, but there were plenty of moments where you looked at it and when you go back and when you watch the season, you say, he missed the guy there. He missed the guy there. There's opportunity for improvement.
Well, that's what dropped him in the draft, right? I mean, everyone liked his leadership and what he did at Mississippi State. The question was, does he have an NFL caliber arm and that sort of accuracy? That really was part of the question on him, right?
Accuracy was the question. There's no question about that. And the thing is really when you watch him in practice, he still doesn't look extremely accurate in practice, but he's one of those guys that, I hate to throw the cliche gamer out there, but he's a guy who plays better in games than he does in practice. And I think that, we see that consistently covering this team. I'm out there watching him at training camp and out there at practice consistently, and you see him miss some throws in practice that he doesn't miss in the games, and so that's going to be interesting to watch. Can he be a little better in that scenario? He and Dez Bryant have spent a bunch of time together this offseason, trying to work on their timing on those deep balls and on those fade routes. And then watch for a guy that the Cowboys drafted in the 4th round this year who I think has a chance to be really special. His name's Ryan Switzer out of North Carolina. He is a Cole Beasley lookalike, a little guy. He's going to wear number 10 this season. And Cole was out for the majority of OTAs and minicamp with a hamstring injury, and Beasley got plugged in right away, and the Cowboys didn't miss a beat. And the plan for the Cowboys is to use both of those guys on the field together at different times, and they are going to be a big mismatch. They're kind of copying that Patriots model with the Julian Edelmans and the Danny Amendola type philosophy, that slot receiver that's really quick. Prescott calls him quarterback friendly is the way he describes it, and they both have a chance, I think, to be big mismatches when they're going against safeties and especially against linebackers.
We got our butts beat deep in the heart of Texas last year by the Dallas Cowboys. They're off the schedule this year, but Pat Doney will be on it all in Dallas at NBC5 and, of course, previewing the Rangers' visit here to Baltimore. Last thing for you, Pat. Hard to believe Tony Romo went the direction he went from the outside, but, again, you're a lot closer to it. Some thoughts about Tony Romo and that decision and how all of that, the sequence of events that has led to him not leading a team this year.
I was surprised. I thought Tony was going to play another season, maybe 2 more years. I thought that going to a team like the Denver Broncos or the Houston Texans would have made a lot of sense. Those are teams that feel like they're a quarterback away, from being real contenders. And there are still real question marks in both of those cities with those teams about how good their quarterbacks will be this year. And I think Tony, could have played a few more seasons. But, when you're talking about, the beating that guy has taken in his career, the injuries he's sustained, the back injury, over and over again that he's had.
Didn't Jerry just build him a special suite there in the Dome for the training room? Man, there's the training room, and then there was the Romo room, right? Literally.
I mean, he's about as tough as it comes, to an NFL player, taken plenty of big hits, found his way to play through the majority of them. A lot of them, he's played through a lot of pain in his career. And so, when you get an opportunity to go to the broadcast booth and get a huge paycheck to do that, at some point you look at your kids and you say, maybe this is the right thing for my life for the next 50 years as opposed to what I want to do for the next year or two and risk so much more. So I was surprised, But at the same time, I thought this broadcast career was coming. I just thought it was going to come in about 2 or 3 years. I didn't think it was going to come this quickly. So it's going to be interesting to watch him in the booth, especially when he's here in Dallas for the Cowboys Thanksgiving Day game against the Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah, that's not rolling off my tongue either, dude. I've had trouble with that one. That's weird.
As a Chargers fan, as a child growing up in Southern California, I'm still having to get used to the fact that they're in Los Angeles now as well. So it's going to be interesting to see him call a Cowboys game on Thanksgiving. That's going to be must-watch TV, especially for Cowboys fans and fans of football here in the DFW area.
Dude, I landed in San Diego back in May on my way to Oregon, believe it or not, and I saw Charger stuff around the air, and I just couldn't believe I'm never going to get off a plane and see a football game there again. I mean, it sort of weirds me out, you know?
It's an unusual topic, and it's tough for me to kind of separate my bias as a fan away from my media takes a little bit there. But, I think that the stadium they were in there was really bad, and the city wasn't going to build them a new stadium. And Los Angeles is going to be an amazing stadium. And now it comes down to me with the Rams and Chargers both in L.A. I think a city like that, it's going to come down to one thing. It's going to come down to who wins first. And I feel like the Chargers are in a position to win faster than the Rams are. And so I think there's a real chance to kind of capture some of the floating NFL fans that are there. The guys who grew up in a different part of the country, the fan that grew up in a different part of the country and has moved to LA for work or for whatever reason and still follows their team from a distance. Well, they might be interested, in picking up a team that's there locally now. And I think that Chargers team is on the verge of having a really good year, and they have a chance to actually have that succeed and work out. But, they're going to be playing in that small stadium there in Southern California where the LA Galaxy play. It only holds about 35,000 people. So it's going to feel like a small college venue in a way. It's going to be an interesting feel. And, I'm fascinated to see how it works out. I was sad to see the team leave San Diego, but at the same time, I'm excited to see them play in a brand new stadium as a Chargers fan.
You done with all this baseball and off-season crap and ready to get to some football here? I think everybody is, right?
Yeah, I love them both, man. I love them both. I'll still follow the Rangers and cover the Rangers, a lot down the stretch, especially if they are able to stay in the playoff race. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'll definitely still be very, very into that and in the clubhouse consistently. But, there's nothing like covering the NFL and especially covering the Dallas Cowboys here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I mean, the amount of attention that this team gets for a Wednesday practice is about the same as a playoff game, media group for most other teams in the NFL. It's packed in the locker room. It's packed at practice. It's packed in the game days. And there are eyes all over the world on the stadiums that they're playing in, and so it's always a lot of fun to cover it. I can't wait for it to get going.
I don't enjoy most of my trips to Dallas, but I had a hell of a time at the U2 show last month. So Viva Dallas and all things, the Arlington area there. We had a lot of fun. Pat, always great to have you on, man. Always love our visits. Going to send everybody out to your Twitter at Pat Doney, DONEY, NBC5, deep in the heart of Texas. They can follow you for all the news on the Blue Stars. And I'll leave you with this. How about them Cowboys? Great to have you on, brother.
Thanks, Nestor.
You got it. Pat Doney joining us here from NBC in Dallas. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day. Going to be kind of a wild week around here. The Peter Principles, chapters 9, 10, and 11 coming later this week. You'll also get the audiobook next week as well. You can email me, nasty at WNST.net. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. And remember, any breaking news at all on the Oriole trade debate or wars, whatever it's going to be over the next week and a half, you're going to get it first on the WNST Tech Service. That is all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Don't forget our morning newspaper also ships to your email inbox digitally each and every morning at 7 a.m. That's all brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's always $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.